As observers, when we make an assessment of the behaviors of young people, we have to be careful to observe the actual behavior of the young person instead of making judgments or interpretations of the behavior. Let's look at the difference between behavior and judgment. When we are observing a young person to assess a particular life skill, we must simply observe their behavior to see whether or not they are able to display that skill. If they are, we try to assess the amount of help they need in order to do so. It is important that we do not impose our judgments of good or bad behavior onto the behavior of the young people. Let's consider an example to make this clearer. We are observing a 10-year-old child, Shilpa, in a classroom setting to assess her problem-solving abilities. We observe the following. The teacher is about to give notes and Shilpa doesn't have a pen. She looks around the classroom and sees that Iqbal has an extra one. But instead of asking him for the pen herself, she asks her friend Ramya to ask Iqbal for the pen. Now, what would be your assessment of Shilpa's problem-solving skills? We might think that it is not good that Shilpa cannot ask Iqbal for the pen herself. However, if we just look at Shilpa's behavior and ask, was she able to overcome and solve the problem successfully? We probably see the behavior differently. So, when observing young people to assess their life skills, we must frame the questions we ask in terms of, is this young person able to do this particular skill, rather than is this young person's behavior good or bad? Now let's consider behavior versus interpretation. When observing a child, we might be tempted to contextualize a child's behavior by understanding their story. We may ask, why might she be exhibiting this particular behavior? However, the scale requires us only to consider the behavior that the child exhibits and not get into the why of the behavior. Observers need to make their observation based on the actual behaviors they see. Let's look at another example. We see a 14-year-old child, Prasanna, snatching a pencil from his friend. As a facilitator or a teacher, we might try to find out why Prasanna acted this way. We might want to know about his relationship with his friend. Has the friend done something to hurt Prasanna before, or any other background information? But as an LSAS observer, we must only consider the behavior that we can see within the observation period. Remember, if you can't see it, you can't measure it. The LSAS is an observation scale. It requires us to make assessment of a young person's life skills based on observable behavior or behavior we can see. During our observations, we must avoid questions such as, why is she behaving this way? Or, is his behavior good or bad? And instead, focus on observing the behavior itself and asking, is this young person able to perform this particular skill? Now, we can tick the appropriate box. Does not yet do, does with lots of help, does with some help, does with a little help, does independently.